Good day, strategy gamers, and welcome back to episode 12 of our Let's Play War in the East 2 Stalingrad to Berlin campaign. In this episode, we're going to be doing the air phase and the first half of our ground support movements of turn 7, and then in the following episode, we'll conclude turn 7 as we usually do with the second half of ground movement and end of turn functions and taking a look at a new mechanic. So turn 7 is December 31st, 1942. So this is the last turn being executed that is in 1942. And that really was kind of the year where the balance started to tilt between the German and Soviet forces. As we enter 1943, we're probably going to see more and more that we have some advantages both numerically and in armament. That's not to say, though, that the Germans are not still a threat. They are capable of, in the summer, really building up for a strong counteroffensive, as they did historically at Kursk. And they're going to have a lot more of these, what they're referred to historically as super weapons, right, make their way to the front. Things like more Tigers, more Panthers, and other technical developments. So this is kind of an interesting turn because it's the last we have of 1942. I do want to begin with a little blurb, though, from our last episode. We ended with our events, and I was a little surprised to see this picture associated with the success that the Germans were having in North Africa. So I decided to do some research on it. This was actually the HMS Eagle. So this was a British carrier in the Mediterranean that sunk. And it was sunk by a German U-boat as it was escorting convoys to resupply Malta. So we had theorized that maybe it was in operations in and around Malta, and it turns out it was. But there were actually a couple of carriers lost in the Mediterranean in World War II, it would seem. Most of them either were, for example, scuttled by the Italians and Germans to block harbors, or like the HMS Eagle, they suffered hits from German U-boats. So there's tragic loss of life here with the HMS Eagle in the Mediterranean, and this must be the event associated with the Axis forces now having a bit of a success in the North Africa theater box that they have to maintain. So just wanted to touch on that before we get too deep into the next turn. So the first thing that we have to do at the beginning of every air turn, right, is try to determine, are there going to be sufficient conditions for our air armies to operate in? And to do that, we're going to look at the weather report, and we're looking at December 31st, 1942. We see that on the ground, much of our front lines are actually under heavy snow conditions. When we look at the weather in the air, we see that there's snowfall all across pretty much all of Eastern Europe and Russia. So given that, it's going to be unlikely that we're going to be too aggressive with our air campaign. Snowfall is different than blizzard, right? With blizzard, you have the winds and such that make it much more difficult to operate. Snowfall, I'm sure we could probably still do some ground support and other operations depending on the severity. But in the interest of preserving our advantage in number of airframes and the kind of war of attrition that we're going to end up having in the air war, we're going to be much more passive. Again, I know it's not the most exciting, but the weather's just kind of dictated this for us these last 4 turns. Looking at the forecast for January 1st, we see that snowfall condition actually will continue. I am optimistic. Meteorological reports are not something I expected to have to learn how to read when playing War in the East 2, but I'm optimistic that this frontier of, I think, low pressure is what that represents, is moving eastward, which is going to bring with it clear skies. And you also see that in Scandinavia, they're in a similar situation where they have clear skies. So I'm hoping this front is moving out, and that after January 1st, so after next turn, we will be in a much better position, I'm hopeful, to be able to really dive deep into the air war. I promise that as we get to turns where there's a better air situation, we will get a little more granular and we'll explore some more of the mechanics of the air war of this game, because it is quite fascinating, and it is one of the largest changes from the first, the game called War in the East, this version's predecessor. This air mechanic and air operation functions actually are taken from Gary Grigsby's War in the West, and that was one of the big changes they introduced to their series. So it is a lot of fun to play around with. So all of that aside, we're going to go through and do as we have been, which is just suggesting that these air armies, instead of running mixed missions, actually rest. And we've been losing. Every now and then I get one like that where I can't change it, and I don't know if it's a bug or just me misunderstanding the mechanic. But we have seen that in the last couple of turns, even though we're telling these units to rest, and when you look at how it simulates our air phase, we see that we're running very minimal number of sorties, and that almost all of them are, already did that one, that almost all of them are actually recon. What we're finding is that we're still losing a couple hundred airframes per turn. So I think what we might go in and see if we can't, even though we're using the AI assist for the air war, if we can't instruct them not to do any operations at all. Here, this gets a little messy because we have the second air army that's been resupplying these units down by the Crimea, if you recall. That one again, there we go. We have the 5th and the 4th air army. Tell them to rest. Actually, I'm going to look at that weather report one more time. Okay, so it does extend all the way down here to the Crimea with that bad weather. I couldn't remember how far it went down, so we can't do anything down there either. So if we look at this, these are the units that we have in place there. And if we wanted to do ground support, we see that we have ground support listed here, and it's asking us to select which ground HQ, etc., etc. I'm going to go in and actually delete some of these air directives. Okay. And then we'll go through each of our armies and do that. I'm also going to get rid of the recon. Even though our losses haven't been that great while running. I think this is why we were seeing some of those losses, is some of these are triggered to also run air superiority. And so air superiority you can set as a directive and it actually execute against that. And you can be very specific about what's going to happen with your fighters to try to counter the enemy's air wings. But there are also some mechanics that get a little complicated where the AI, depending on a number of variables such as the enemy fighters' proximity to your air bases, the AI may launch anyways as kind of a air raid drill response almost, where if you envision this, if there are bombers spotted heading towards your air base with all of your airframes, it would behoove humans, if they're able to not hop into their fighters, go up into the air, and to try to fight them back, right? So the AI does trigger responses like that on occasion. And I don't know that anyone is aware of a way to prevent that. But really, most of those losses were probably from a couple of these air armies actually having air superiority directives assigned to them. So we're just going to clear all of these out. It's the second air army, the 4th. Now, if I am successful in this, ideally what it will mean is that at the end of our turn, when we look at a turn recap, we will see that we did not lose any air units. That is the ideal outcome after having done all of that. And honestly, we're in a position where on our front lines, we don't have any areas of our front line where air support is going to be where it's going to save us, right? We're on the offensive right now. If we have to be a little more conservative, knowing that we don't have any air reinforcements to help us, very well, we can do that. So we're going to just going to hit this a couple times because I think I did forget that in the last turn, and I'll do it again during the ground phase out of paranoia. So now that we've done that, we're going to end and execute our air directive phase, and we'll see what this simulates for us. I'm thinking we won't even have any recon sorties flying, although I guess we do. Did I miss something? It seems like at least one of these has done air recon. Wonder which it was. We're now on day 5, so it looks like it's running the mission for the sorties 2 days of the 7 days of the week. Each turn representing 7 days. Okay. So actually it looks like most of the air army still ran an air recon. And I'm wondering if this is just... I'm going to clear all air directives. I'm wondering if this is just because I've kept the AI air assist toggle is on, and that when I clicked execute, it's still populated in those directives. Maybe. I'm just not certain. So now we're going to look at our ground phase, but before we get into the Leningrad front, I want to take a look at our theater boxes. So we see that the Far East and the Transcaucasus theater box, they appear to be, we're meeting our obligations here. We're at 108% and 115%. Far East 113 and 106%. And we could probably min-max this a little, and we could take a couple of ground units and actually pull them back to either the reserve box or to the on-map units. But we're going to leave these a little higher than what it's requesting, in the hopes that this then helps put pressure on these theater boxes for the Axis and the computer to have to deal with through the kind of the event-driven system that exists. The northern front, you see that our ground forces are meeting their obligation, but for air, we're still a little short. So we're going to go to our reserves and look at some of the air units we have. And ultimately what we're going to do is assign some more air units to the northern front. Let's take a look here. For fighters, most of our fighters, we actually find that the units need replacement airframes. So like when we look at this unit, we have no airframes that are ready to go. This one has 16 that are ready to go. When we look at this, do we not have any pilots? The pilots get assigned once they've deployed. That could be. So we're not going to move any fighters given the situation there. But I think what we will do is some of these fighter bombers we might move to the northern front. So let's do 3 units of fighter bombers. Just taking a bit of a mix here of them. And then we'll also send 2 tactical bombers to the northern front. Level bombers I don't think makes sense for the theater. Recon we can send. We maybe not have any recon that are ready to go though. See, this would make sense because since we've only been really running recon sorties, we're probably losing a lot more with a recon disproportional to the other air units, which then means they're going to active air operational groups, not to the reserve box. Okay. So all done with that, hopping back over to the Leningrad front, we see that they've actually left this hex here. Little open, which is interesting. And we have this rifle brigade, but I don't know that I want that to go up against 2 German divisions. Feels a little foolhardy. And here we have the fortress unit and a rifle division. We could maybe move over the rifle division, although that's going to exhaust the unit because it's in their zone of control. So I think we're going to leave that, and we're going to avoid temptation there. And what we will do is on this side, we have these 2 units here, and I think we're going to take, we're going to do a little bit of shuffle again. We're going to take the 256 and we're going to move that over. And then we're going to take the 327th. We're going to move that down here. And really what we're trying to do is bring more forces here along this line. And I think we will try to break through in this hex this turn. Let's see what the fortification level is like. Ooh, it's 2 there. That's not so great, is it? And here they have 2 infantry divisions. Let's see what this looks like. 27 to 7. It is almost 4 to 1. Yeah, I think we kind of have to, actually, because this is going to be one of the few areas we can try to push them out of. Okay, so we were successful with that. Now I wonder if we can't. Doesn't be able to move that down. We just don't have enough movement points on any of these to get in there. Is that really true? So what if we take you off the line because you're at 55 fatigue? Let's just play along with this for a moment. Then we take the 314th and move that down. We still don't have enough to move in there. Okay. This hex is obviously just a little too strong for us right now. Could we break through here? There's only 1 infantry division and they don't have any fortification. No, not going to be worth that. And we're going to let these 2 German infantry divisions stay isolated for another turn. So you can see that they've only been isolated really for 1 turn in full, and already their supply situation is really worsening. And they tried very hard last turn to actually try to break out of this pocket here. And one of the reasons that we did push against this hex is now the only way for them to put pressure and try to break out is going to be these 2 infantry divisions attacking this stack that we have here, which, if you remember, we moved up that tank brigade and an anti-tank regiment, which actually looks like it's of almost no strength now, so it took pretty heavy losses. But we moved those up to try to defend against that attack, and I don't think they're going to be able to break through there. We don't have a fortification level yet, but that's okay. I wonder if the 2nd Rifle Corps, if we can't move that over to help defend, because that's pretty strong there. We're going to leave it as is. You see here we continue to try to repair the railroads that we have all along the line here. Just so many railroads to repair, it's not even funny. Moving a little south, we had pushed them out of this hex the previous turn. And actually, let's actually, before we do that and go down, let's look at some of the battles that happened. So they tried to break through here, and we held. Nothing really interesting looks like it happened here. In this hex, they attacked 3 separate times. And here you see that tank brigade really taking some heavier losses, where we lost 19 armored fighting vehicles. Let's see how that played out. T-60s and T-34s, okay. They lost 800 men, we lost 1,000. And they outnumbered us in terms of number of men 2-1. My goodness. And then their second attempt, they still were using the same forces to attack, and they outnumbered us 2-1 again. And we see that they lost 800 men. We lost another 8 armored fighting vehicles. Wow. And then on the third attack, it looks like they attacked with the 96th Infantry Division. I wonder if that's not one of these two here. I bet it is. I can't have this view up and hover over to find out. Okay. So they really did want to get out of that pocket. I'm betting it was this one right here. Not 227th, 121st. So it must have been... Oh, it's the second division they have here. So they must have been attacking from this hex in there. Okay. Looking at some more of the results. That was actually at around Leningrad, excuse me. We'll get to this in a moment. So we had cleared out this little hex here. We can move into it, but then you see we're going to be completely surrounded by all these units. When we look at fortification levels, I don't think we're going to have enough strength. But what I'd really like to do is to break through right here to continue pushing on that rail line and try to drive in between them. But when we do the math, we see that we're just 1-1, if that. So it's not going to be very effective if we tried that. And then down here, they've got 3 pretty much all along the line in terms of fortification level. So, as we've discussed in previous turns, I don't know that these units are going to have enough right now to break out and cut off Leningrad. I think we're going to have to do it once we've cleaned up this pocket down here. So on that note, let's see what they did in this pocket. So first they knocked us out of this hex, this little crossroads. We lost 83 guns. They lost 28 armored fighting vehicles. That was a pretty big battle. So let's see. So they had a mixture of tanks and SP units. Panzerjägers, Marder 2s, Panzer 4s and 3s. Interesting. And then we suffered pretty heavy in terms of gun platforms. I wonder if they were anti-tank mostly. They lost a lot of AA guns and anti-tank guns. Actually, it looks like the majority of ours were field guns, mortars. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. But we were outnumbered 2-1. So the fact that even though we retreated, that we weren't routed with any of those units or shattered, and we should probably just, let's say, count our blessings that that's all that happened there. They appear to have started to pull back this line, I think because they know what's about to happen, where we're coming in and we can break out here. As long as we can keep some semblance of supply of these units, we're going to be able to break through. Supply is the question. That is what will prevent us from being an overwhelming success down in this pocket. They also tried to break out here, and they routed this rifle brigade that we had put there, which is very unfortunate. But you see it was 10-1 in terms of the number of fighting men. But now I think what we're going to do is see if we can't finally finish off these units. I don't know if we're going to be able to get that one this turn. Here, their defensive combat value is 121. How? Fortification level of 3, sure. Huh. Actually, now that we think about it, right? So they attacked with all 3 divisions. So we have 44,000 men surrounded here. Does kind of make some sense, I suppose. So we might have to just continue holding the line as is. Let's just do a bit of a check. So that's a division. Just a rifle brigade there. Rifle division. I think we'll take one of these rifle divisions and move it down to reinforce this unit. And then we're going to take... Those are all part of the same army, so I'm not sure we're going to have enough there. Okay. That is it. Could take... Let's take this rifle division. We're going to move it here. Then we'll take this rifle brigade up. Take this other rifle brigade. So now we have 3 brigades all sitting here. Or leave those as is, I think. Now we're going to look to continue our advance, right? So let's see if we take these 3 and move them back down. So we captured one of their depots again. And we're going to take these 3, move them over here. These 3 divisions, I think we can. Actually, let's take this rifle division. I'm going to move that down to the HQ. We're going to keep this 11th Army as kind of our front line here. It's surrounding these units. They're fortification level 3, so I don't think we're going to mess with that. Yeah, 153 defensive value. My goodness. Did not realize they were going to be so strong with some of those units. So this is good. It looks like we're getting this rail line repaired, which helps resupply these units. And now we have the option of taking these 2 rifle divisions and moving them up. My concern is, again, that then we leave them in this kind of pincer situation where they can be surrounded. Not surrounded, they can be attacked from both sides is probably a better way to put it. Yes, we got 3 divisions, 3 divisions. That's 6 divisions here holding this line. It just looks a little easier on the eye, right? Because it's not a bunch of chips all spread out here. I'm going to actually review the line here, and I think we're going to take each of these individual stacks and move them to reinforce these lines. This rifle division, go here. That would exhaust them, so maybe I just go down here to this unit instead. Let's do that. So now what we have is the 1st Shock Army and the 34th Army having encircled these units here. Just going to ever so slightly reposition the HQ, I think. Ideally, we want to get the 31st Army units, which are 2 down here, to help and reinforce their own units and their own front lines. So we're just going to stay static with these guys. Because here I sense a bit of a counterattack coming. We have 3 infantry divisions, another 2 here. And this isn't something to mess around with. This is pretty serious. This might be the first time that I've ever done this in this series. But we're actually going to take the 241st. And we're going to move them back to this hex. And this way, there is nothing. In here, they're a little stronger right now, and they're in better supply. Now there is not a single hex that can be attacked from more than 1 hex, right? That kind of force multiplication. So I think we're just going to hold this line until we can fix some of our supply issues. again, supply is going to continue to be difficult as long as we find ourselves surrounded week after week after week in heavy snowfall. Sure, we can adapt and we can fight in it, but that doesn't mean the fact that trucks are less efficient driving in heavy snow. Right? That's the situation. Could maybe try to push down here. So there's a middle cavalry regiment, a 2nd Sturm Brigade. And there's no fortification on the hex. We just aren't going to break through there. I think we just need to let this kind of sit and rest. As tempting it is as it is to cut off that rail line, it really would only impact a couple of these divisions here. Because we toggle this off, we've already cut off this line going north-south. So I think we're going to let that be. Down here we continue to have supply worries. Let's see if they had any actions in this area. Doesn't look like they did. I think we just need to let some of this be. We have this 3rd Shock Army. I think we might move these units up. This is an HQ unit. We are not even close to being able to take that out. But we continue to put pressure, right? I would really like to move up just one more hex, but I think that's getting to the point of kind of overextending ourselves. We'll move this infantry unit up. We could move that rifle corps. So here they have the Blue Infantry Division, the 35th Infantry Division, and the 8th Panzer. Tempted to push through here. Because then, if we push through, then we leave them with 2 options. Counterattack and push me back. Or, if I can hold the hex, they have to redeploy their front line to cover these 2 hexes. But if I can't hold the hex, it doesn't matter. So we're going to be conservative. I know this is an entirely new thing for us, but we're going to be conservative here. This Panzer Division, I feel, is actually moved up, and they're trying to cut these units off. So it is a very good thing that we have our lovely 5th Army coming up here to reinforce the front line. So this is exactly the reason that we started to move these units down, was we knew we were going to have a bit of a gap here based off how they were positioning themselves. So that's the railroad here. 144th Rifle can move up here. HQ unit can move up. And yeah, I think that was it. And this was part of the Western Front. But now we've assigned it to the Leningrad Front, which is right here. So that's good. And they're starting to get a little low on supply, but we just need to kind of throw them in at the problem, right, and hold this line. We can't have them start to encircle this 4th Shock Army. That would not be good. All of these units, if you remember back 2 to 3 turns, they were all red in terms of their supply condition. Already we can see some are turning green, others orange, so it is getting better. It just doesn't really look like it still. These units I'm actually a little more worried about, that they continue to be in such poor supply. And although we have this rail line connected, we look at our rail view, down here, it looks like it's not being used because we have it damaged up here, right? So until we connect these X's on the rail line, it's not really going to matter that this rail line is in good condition. So that's kind of the priority, and that's exactly what this railroad construction brigade is doing, I am sure. Let's take another look to see where that they had a counterattack. We'll review these two quick. So here we held our line. They attacked twice. This was a big battle. Each side having more than 20,000 men, losing 700 each. 20 guns to 10 guns. And then they lost 18 armored fighting vehicles. We lost 52. So let's see how that played out. So here, these are those SP guns, and we lost. See, I really don't like seeing this. We lost 3 KV-1s, 18 T-34s, and then some lighter tanks. The Matilda actually, I believe, was a British light tank. So that was actually the first battle. The second one, though, it's very similar in nature, actually. They lost 11 armored fighting vehicles. We lost 28. And, you know, given that we have this numerical superiority, I'm really kind of okay with this. It's just the KV-1s losing those that I'm a little disappointed by. Because those can be so useful to us when used correctly. Looking at our front line here, in the previous turn, we had finally captured the encircled unit in Rshev, and Rshev historically was seen as a very strategic and important city for both sides, and was the site of many battles. But now that we've captured that, we now have multiple armies that we can now move south to reinforce the line, which is... So let's start taking a look at how we can actually bring these units down to begin supporting this line. So I think first, oh, I'm still in battle recap mode. That's why nothing's happening. First, we're going to look at the 22nd Army here. And I think they're going to help reinforce where the 41st Army is really kind of stretched across multiple hexes. We're going to bunch these up to have a higher concentration of forces for counterattack. And what we'll then do is we'll move down the 22nd Army to fill in where they're at today. So let's begin that by moving over. Actually, maybe we'll first see it's 2 to 1. We're not going to do that because we're already in a low supply situation. We're going to start moving all of these units shuffled down the line, right? Bring up all of these infantry divisions. Oh, I didn't click on the next one, that's why I was wondering why it looked like that. Move these guys down. These are actually on refit right now, which I'd probably done because of their fatigue level. So we're going to take them off refit, put them back in ready status, and we'll move them right down to the front line. You've had your break, comrades. Now it's time for more battle. So we have our HQ moved down now as well. We just look here, that is 3 to 1. Might hold on that though. And then we have here the 30th Army. So now I'm looking at this and going, we have the 30th Army, the 20th Army still needs to redeploy here, and then we have the 29th Army. Here we actually need to move up our HQ. 49th Army. I'm actually sitting here debating if maybe we don't take the 30th Army, and if we don't bring them west to help with this offensive. I think we are going to bring them west. And I think we're going to bring them in a manner that lets us go this northern route so as to try not to hurt the supplies that are going south here. So we're going to move you here. So by the way, I want to make a point of something. That unit was at 0 fatigue. Now it's at 32 fatigue. That is just how impactful and meaningful moving units are in this game. And it makes sense, right? Going tens and tens of kilometers at least here, moving this army to this northern position to help out with that west front. I'm just going to keep moving these up. And I think what this will really help with is that as I think it's just a matter of time until the 11th Army breaks through here. I think what this will help with then is it'll give us another army where we can have, let's just say the 11th Army can form a line here, going east-west and facing south. And then the 30th Army can break through and they can start in a bit of a pincer fashion going up through Smolensk and attacking in the rear here by Novgorod. I think that's going to be a bit of the plan. But first, we have to move everyone up. Some of these do not have as many movement points as the others. Here we need to take the HQ and bring that up. It's part of the 30th Army too. So they'll go up there. 30th Army looks like it's one of the larger ones. You go there. There. With that army moved out, you really see, look at all of this railroad construction that's going on. It's a pretty big priority for us, obviously. Now going to move up this last unit here from the 20th Army. And then I think what we will also do is take this stack of 20th Army. We'll bring them down here. And let's see. 24 to 8. We take just this stack. 5.8 to 8. Take these two. 7.6. They held. Okay. Let's take you here. Let's see, can you push through? Alright, so they retreated that time. Now we can take... I actually want... Yeah, we can start moving some of these units. that uses up all of their movement points, and I'm not sure we want to do that. But I think what we will do is move these units down, because I need to start making some room here for the 33rd Army to come in. So the 33rd Army now can take your spot on the line. Let's take this 7th Guards. We're going to move you up into this new little pocket that we just made. And we'll take 17th Rifle Division to help reinforce that unit. were some of these on refit, maybe? It looks like these two are. We might let those stay on refit for another turn. This one is in unready status. We'll leave you there. What we've done is we've really mismanaged the situation, and we now find the 29th Army doesn't have a spot on the front line to help with. Maybe the 29th Army moves further south on the line and helps out down here. So we just repositioned those units. Oh, I need to stay focused here. We still have elements of the 20th Army that need to be moved up. So that's the artillery division. I'm going to move the rifle division up there. Then the artillery division we will move here. HQ then comes up. And yeah, do we maybe move 49th down? I don't have movement points for both of you to move in there. Maybe you do. Now, take you two, you can go here. And also move you down. So now, finally, we have made room for our 29th Army. Elements of which are very fatigued. You're staying at refit there. Most of you show as unready, which is just great. Gonna move our HQ down. A number of you are just a little tired, it looks like. Let's take you two, though. We're at least going to move them further south. So that way, as they do recover behind the front line here, they're in a better position to support once they are ready to do so. You are all part of the 33rd Army refitting. We're also part of the 33rd. You can stay right there. Yeah. Yep, you can stay right there. And here, 20th and the 29th Army, that's okay. Oh, no. No, it's the 29th Army I'm trying to move down here. We don't have enough movement points to do so, so you can stay. Just to keep the HQs a little organized, we're going to move up the HQ of the 49th Army. Okay, so there's that. On this front line, I think all of our units are pretty exhausted to the point where they're not going to be too combat effective to push through. We've already had some success here, pushing up here, and as we get in behind these units, I think what we will see is that they will start to withdraw back, and we just need to keep repeating that pattern all the way until Smolensk. The one thing that might happen, though, is that as the front line gets smaller and smaller, right, because it's not as stretched because of this pocket that they've formed here, as it gets smaller and it's this straight line across, there'll be fewer hexes to defend, which means they can be in more defensive positions with multiple divisions per hex defending, and that is very reminiscent of what we're seeing near the Leningrad fronts, where they just have masses of infantry divisions defending hexes that we can't break through. If that happens, as we mentioned in our strategy overview in the previous episode, it may be kind of this phased approach of letting these railroad construction units repair these railroads, excuse me, to then bring up more and more forces and make sure that everyone is in good supply, because right now that's not the current situation. We're going to go just a little further on the front here before we call the episode to a close. Down here is the 50th Army. We might be able to push back this unit. It has no fortification whatsoever. It's only 2 to 1, 3 to 1. Let's do it. And they retreat it. So that's tank corps, and I don't want to put it in the position where it can just be easily counterattacked. So we're going to stay right where we're at. Down here, similar situation as before. Probably our best hope would be against this unit, which is 2 to 1, but we're going to hold on that. You have no combat preparation at all. I think we'll leave you off the front line just to help with your fatigue a little. Now we look at the 16th Army. Wait, which HQ is this? Need to be much closer to the front. Looking at the 16th Army. Don't think we're going to break through in any of those, which is fine. Up here, we have the 3rd Tank Army. Hello. How would you like to help the war effort today? Well, this is great news. I did not expect this. So, wow, they can go all the way up to here. We're not going to, but we're going to take the 3rd Tank Army and get it in position to help on the front line in the coming turns. They were all at 0 fatigue. Now they're at 21 fatigue. It's pretty impactful. We might actually bring you here, though. Yep, we're going to. And then you are all part of the 3rd Tank Army, too. So let's move you up here. Okay. Now what if we tried to push a little here? Let's see if we can't rout this infantry division. They held? Isn't that the one we just pushed back? Are you kidding me? What the heck? Those guys are not in a great position now. Says the guy who just committed them there. Okay. They've been too aggressive on that one. I think what we can do is move up that infantry division, that infantry division. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. Okay. I got so excited that we just had this tank army sitting there. It is pretty good news. So this is the Moscow defense zone. And I'm not sure I know how to get them off of city fortification. Fortified region. No, we don't want to build it. Fortified region. So this is Stavka. No, this is Moscow defense zone. Maybe we need to change. Maybe we need to change a setting. Or we maybe to assign you to different HQs. frozen for 6 turns. Okay, that might answer my question then of how we can start using these units. Frozen for 6 turns. Okay. So we have to wait a little longer there. That's fine. And I think here we're going to call the episode to a close before we get into all of this action. Because as you can see, they've started to pull back and we're going to have a lot of moves to make along this front line. So with that, just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch the video and to watch the series. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, would love to hear them. If you drop them in the comments section, I'll do my best to address them. And as always, if you'd be so kind as to like or subscribe the video or channel, really helps get the name of this game out there and more people to see some of this content, so we can try to combat against that anxiety of tackling such a huge game with so much detail, and show that sometimes you can just step into it and figure things out as you go. And we'll continue to introduce new mechanics every couple of turns. So with that, strategy gamers, have yourselves a great day. Thank you so much. Bye now.